All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, friends. Good evening, colleagues. Please confirm you can hear me. Please confirm you can hear me. Anybody in the house want to confirm that you can hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Thank you, everybody. Good evening and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Oluwaseun DAMILARE-VICTOR, the founder of Akin Performance Africa. And I'm not here alone. I have my co-hosts for today, Esther and Olayemi. They would be assisting me with decorum in the room, and of course, admitting participants to join the meeting. So today it's a special day. It's one of our free webinar series, and we have a very interesting topic to discuss today, and a very versatile, experienced facilitator. He's been here since 20 minutes ago. All right, before we dive into the business of the day, let me just tell us a bit about what Akin Performance Africa is all about. This is a not-for-profit making mentoring platform for young professionals. And as you can see on the screen, we basically help younger professionals cross their career bridges. That's what we do in Akin Performance. And we have a WhatsApp group where we relate, interact, have discussions and all of that. All right, so today we have managing your boss effectively as our topic. And you agree with me that you cannot succeed in that organization if you don't manage this number one critical stakeholder, who is your boss. We can call it line manager, we can call it supervisor, but the boss is one word we all are used to using. All right. So today we have, like I said earlier, Gado Titles, who is going to be our facilitator, right? So before I introduce him, what do we do in Akin Performance Africa? Basically, we help younger professionals to cross their career bridges, to grow in their careers, to learn, to do exploits, okay? And our mantra is growth and impact, okay? What are the programs we do have? Aside this free webinar series that we have, we also provide Akin Performance tips and career development advice to our members through our various programs. We have a career clinic, we have Ask the Experts and other programs. We offer free personal branding tips to our members. We also share verified job opportunities, all right? So if you join us, you can also, you may find your dream job in our network, all right? And lastly, we offer discounted learning programs and coaching services to our members. On our network, we have close to 30 mentors and coaches and facilitators. One of them is here with us today, okay? So quickly, without further ado, let us dive into meeting who is our facilitator today. His name is Titus Gado. Titus is a manufacturing operations leader with years of experience in operations management and capability development. Gado is passionate about asset integrity and reliability management, of course, capability development and manufacturing process improvements. He has been involved in several performance improvement projects, capability development projects, and deployed several learning interventions that yielded returns on investment in millions of dollars. Wow, interesting. What are his core skills and competencies? He's skilled in organizational leadership, systems engineering, end-to-end supply chain capability development, manufacturing operations management, lean system, power and energy maintenance, mentoring, engineering improvement strategies, management consulting, reliability engineering management, and motivational speaking. You can see it is loaded. We have brought one of the best to us to deal with today's topic. What is his professional experience? He holds a master's in engineering management, HND in electrical and electronics engineering, and currently is a national manufacturing transformation manager with 7UP bottling company. Just to mention, Gado was my former colleague when I was in 7UP bottling company. He has held various roles in several multinational companies like Coca-Cola and any bottling company, UZ Cousins, Chi Limited, and so many. What are his technical membership? He's a certified maintenance and reliability professional, CMRP. He's a certified reliability engineer, CRE. He is a certified management consultant, CMC, and he is a fellow of the Institute of Management Consultants, FIMC. Wow, ladies and gentlemen, today is going to be explosive, right? Gado is one of my friends and colleagues that I'm always proud of when it comes to dealing with leadership issues. Okay, so today, Gado is going to be dealing with this topic. And aside Gado, I also have other mentors in the house who will also be lending their voice, as we dissect and discuss how to manage your boss effectively. Ladies and gentlemen, could you please go to the chat room? Please use our e-class, write messages, and please let's welcome Gado to the podium because I'm going to be yielding the mic to him. So please go to your chat box quickly. Tell him welcome, tell him we love you, tell him what you are expecting from today's session, okay? So ladies and gentlemen, join me as I yield the electronic mic to Titus Gado, who is going to be dealing with today's topic. But a quick class rules. Please, let's keep our mics muted. He's going to be speaking for 30 minutes. We'll go through his slides for 30 minutes. And after that, we'll do a lot of interaction, questions, and answers. So while he's speaking, any question drops on your mind, please go to the chat box and drop the question, all right? And when it's time for Q&A, we would ensure we take all questions and deal with them, right? With a view to finding the best and most appropriate answers to them. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to yield the mic to Titus Gado, who is going to take over. Titus, over to you from now. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, HPA, for the opportunity and honor to be here to speak to us. So I'm part of the team, actually. So I see a lot of new people here. So welcome on board, everyone. We are happy to have you, and we are sure that after this session, you will join our team. You join the WhatsApp group. I'm sure before we leave, Shion will share the link to the WhatsApp and then have everyone who is new and wanting to join the team be part of what we are doing. Okay, so let's go straight to the business of the day. So it's going to be more interactive, but I'll try to run through my slides for 30 minutes or even less, so that we'll have enough time to do a lot of engagement around asking questions and speaking. And I'll be sharing from experience. Shane will be sharing, our other mentors who are also in the house will be sharing from their experience, because at the end of the day, when it comes to issues like this, there is no hard and fast rule. It is just about learning from the experiences of others. Okay, so let me just go straight to the point and share my screen so we can start. Okay, so please confirm you can see my screen.
Yes, I can see your screen, and I want to believe every other person can see your screen.
Great, great. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about how to manage your boss effectively. And I'm going to be sharing a few nuggets or points, and then we'll go into discussion fully. So, amongst all the variables on your career journey, who your boss will be is one that you do not have control over. So you can choose where you want to work. In fact, you can choose or negotiate how much you want to be paid. You can push for whatever benefits you want. But at the end of the day, you cannot choose who your boss will be, because bosses are given to us. And they determine our career trajectory, they determine our employer experience, they determine our learning experience, they determine how visible we get or how visible we become in the organization. And in fact, they determine our time on the job. How long you stay on a job or with any organization is largely dependent on who your boss is. This is very critical to note. And that is why the topic of how to manage your boss can never be overemphasized. So let's go. So research has shown that more than 85% of employees quit their jobs because of their bosses. And more than 75% of employees experience a quantum leap in their careers because their bosses push to make this happen. So this is very critical. How long you stay on a job is a function of who your boss is and your relationship with your boss. And then how fast you grow or your career trajectory as an employee is also a function of who your boss is and how far your boss is willing to go to see you grow. This is very key. All right. Your inherent potentials and capabilities can also find expression only when they are nurtured and given opportunity. And this can only happen if you have the right guidance and a boss who creates that opportunity to shine. So at the end of the day, you can be highly skilled, you can be a high flyer per se, but if that opportunity is not given to you to shine, you will never be able to shine. You can be full of potentials, but if somebody doesn't bring you out and announce you or gives you the opportunity or sets the stage for you, it becomes difficult for you to shine. And the first person on the list who will do this for you is definitely your boss. I know there's a lot of talk about mentorship, there's a lot of talk about sponsorship, but even at that, the first person to sell you or announce you or create a pathway for you to grow as an employee is your boss. So high flyers are only high flyers because they have a conducive environment to shine. Without a conducive environment, you cannot be a high flyer. Nobody sees you and nobody knows what you are doing. But somebody will always create that conducive environment for you to shine. This is very critical to note. Now, why must you manage your boss? Number one, you are managing your boss because you need to gain the trust of your boss or your manager. Imagine working with someone who does not trust you. He doesn't trust you when it comes to the numbers. He doesn't trust you when it comes to information. He doesn't even trust your loyalty to him. Then obviously there's going to be issues. So one reason why you must manage your boss is because you must gain the trust of your boss. Number two, you must manage your boss because you need to secure his support. If your boss does not support you, then forget it. You are in for a terrible experience on the job. You must manage your boss because you need to earn the respect of that boss. He needs to trust you and he needs to respect you. This is very key. You must manage your boss because you want to advance your career. Your career growth is largely dependent on how you manage your boss. It's largely dependent on your relationship with your boss. You must manage your boss because you want to have improved job satisfaction. And to a large extent, your job satisfaction comes when you have a great working environment. When the work environment is not good, when the work environment is toxic, when the culture doesn't make sense, you get frustrated and you become disengaged. We're not even start talking about the motivation, you become disengaged completely. So you need to manage your boss because you want to improve your job satisfaction. You need to manage your boss because you want to increase your efficiency and productivity. Because if your boss is not on your side, I promise you, you can never be efficient. In fact, even if you are productive in your own scene, your boss has this power. All the power is in the hands of your boss to determine whether you are productive or not productive, whether you are efficient or not efficient. So you must manage your boss because you want to increase your efficiency and productivity. This is very vital. You must manage your boss because you want to improve communication. Because once there is the right kind of communication, when there's the right environment for good communication, the tendency of having misunderstanding is low. And once misunderstanding is less, then you get a smooth sail as you progress in your career. So these are some few reasons why you need to manage your boss. We have 1,001 reasons why you need to manage your boss, but these are some few reasons why you need to manage your boss. So we go straight into the points, or I want to share on how to manage your boss. I have 7 points. And so we're going to start with the first point. How do you manage your boss? How would you want to manage your boss, or how do you manage your boss? To manage your boss, number one, you need to understand his personality or her personality and leadership style. Every individual has different personality. And the truth is, no two people are the same. No two people are the same. So to manage your boss, you must understand your boss's personality and leadership style. You must try to understand how they think, because people process information differently, people think differently. So the first step in building a solid relationship with your boss is to understand the individual differences, right? Boss A is not the same as boss B. The way boss A thinks may not be the same as the way boss B thinks. So you must understand the way your boss thinks, number one. You must be able to decipher what gets them happy and what gets them upset. There are people, if there's a way you talk to somebody, or there's a way you give feedback to your boss, he takes the feedback and take appropriate steps to make a redress and come back for you to get the desired outcome. And then there's a way you give feedback. At the end of the day, the boss gets upset. So you must be able to decipher what gets your boss happy and what gets your boss upset. You must understand their belief systems, their philosophies, and principles. Now, the belief system of each individual is a function of the person's religion, the person's ethnicity, the person's upbringing, and so many other factors. So for you to be able to manage your boss, the first step in understanding one of the steps in understanding their personality is to understand their belief system, their philosophies, and their principles. For example, a typical northerner will not want to, or will not be comfortable with hugs, for example. A typical northerner will not be comfortable with shaking handshake with female employees. It's not because it is wrong, but for him, because of his belief system, because of his religion, because of his upbringing, these things are not normal, right? There are people who will not want you to call them by their first name. That is because of how they are brought up. That is part of their belief system. So you must understand who your boss is, understand his belief system, understand his philosophy, and understand his principles. Very key. Number two, you must understand their priorities. You must understand what they care about. You must understand what matters to them. Because what matters to person A may not be the same as what matters to person B. Right? Now, and for me to be able to engage with person A effectively and get the desired results from person A, I must be able to understand what person A or leader A cares about and what matters to that person. Number two, I must be able to understand their insecurities, what frightens them, what are they afraid about, or what are they afraid of? Because again, you must also understand that your bosses are humans, right? So they have what they care about and they have what they are afraid of, or they have specific things that they are not too comfortable with. They have specific things that they are insecure about. So you must understand their insecurities. You must also understand what frightens them. You must understand what they love. That is what they are passionate about. This is very key. You must understand what they are passionate about. You must understand how they measure success or failure. Because at the end of the day, this person is going to be managing your performance, right? And for this person to manage you effectively and for you to be able to perform well, you must be able to understand this person's measure of success and this person's measure of failure. This is very key. Priorities are unique to individuals, and you must understand that. This is very key. Every individual have specific things that are priorities to them. So you must understand the priorities of your boss to be able to manage them effectively. Number three, you must understand their expectations. And this is where so many of us miss it. A research was carried out some time back. In fact, personally, I also carried out that research, and I discovered that out of every 10 employees, only 4 can really tell you what their job description is. Only 4 truly understand what their job description is. And this is where the problem begins. Because if you do not understand what your job description is, then how do you understand what is expected from you? Because the first step is to understand your job description. Number two, you must understand your deliverables, because outside the broad scope of your job description, there are specific things that are your responsibilities and your deliverables. So you must understand what are deliverables. This is key. You must understand the measure of success, because again, for every job description, there are specific metrics or KPIs that are used to measure performance. So you must understand what are these KPIs and how they are calculated, or how the business comes about them. And you must understand how they will be used to measure your performance. Because at the end of the day, what is success to me? As a HR professional, as a maintenance manager, as a production manager, as an IT specialist, what is success to me? You must understand this. Then you must understand the unwritten expectations. This is where it becomes very dicey. Because at the end of the day, the truth is, in the course of your career and on the job, you will be tasked with responsibilities that are not part of your job description. You will be tasked with responsibilities that are not written as part of what is expected from you. So will you tell your boss that you're not going to do it, or will you tell your boss that this is not part of my job? So you must understand the unwritten expectation. And at the end of the day, you must eliminate all forms of assumptions, because in this relationship between you and your boss, there is no room for assumptions. That is why understanding expectation is very critical. Number four, never compare your boss with others. You must understand that your boss is also a human being. Because I see some people complain so much about their boss and forgetting that this person is also a human being and this person can make mistakes. So you must accept the weaknesses of your boss and you must accept the strengths of your boss. This is very key. No man is 100% perfect, right? So people have weaknesses, they have areas of opportunities, and they have strengths. So you must understand the strengths of your boss, you must understand your boss's weaknesses, and then you must accept these weaknesses and strengths. You must learn to manage their personality. This is very key. And you must learn to customize your way of working with them. Most times we make this mistake of trying to manage our new boss or our current boss the way we manage the previous boss. It doesn't work that way, because these two people are different. And because they are different, you must manage them differently. And to be able to manage them differently, just like we started from point number one, there you must understand these critical points and then customize a specific way of working with them. I'm privileged to have worked with so many bosses, I think about 5 or 7 of them so far in my career. And I can tell you that I did not manage any of these bosses the same way. I have a specific boss that wants you to give him information per second, and I have another boss that doesn't want you to give him information. He doesn't care about how you go about getting the job done. His concern is just get the job done. So for him, don't give him feedback. He doesn't care. He just wants you to deliver on the job. But I also have this another boss that will say, "Oga, I don't want you to take me by surprises. I want you to give me updates every hour or every 30 minutes or whatever." So if I decide to work with boss A the way I work with boss B, then I'll have issues. Because for boss A, he needs feedback per second, but boss B doesn't want this kind of feedback. Boss B will prefer you to give him the result. How you go about delivering the result is your business. Just deliver the result, right? And there are bosses that want to micromanage you, and there are other bosses that want to give you free hand to operate because they trust in your capability and competence. And how you manage them will definitely be different. So we must get to the point that we understand these people and customize our way of working with them. It is also critical, just like I said in the beginning, that you must understand that your bosses are humans too. Okay, so let's go to point number 5. You must demonstrate value. This is very key. Because at the end of the day, performance is the bedrock for boss management. Once you are trying to manage your boss outside performance, I will call it eye service, because you do not have potential, you do not have capability, you do not have what it takes to deliver on the job. What you're trying to do is just to manage expectations without substance. So the bedrock of managing your boss will be delivering on the job. It will be being capable and competent. So you must demonstrate value. And one way to demonstrate value is to show what you bring to the table, right? Because you cannot want to engage your boss and want your boss to like you or want your boss to believe in your capability or trust you without showing that you are competent and capable to deliver on the job. So you must show what you bring to the table. Number two, you must seek to make life easy for your boss. Because at the end of the day, that is what matters. Why do I have you as a direct report? I'm having you as a direct report to make life easy for me. I have you as a direct report to help me get the job done. Because I have deliverables too as a boss, and I expect you as my direct report to help me deliver my own deliverables. Right? So you must seek to make life easy for your boss, because if you make life easy for your boss will make life easy for you. If you make life difficult for your boss, for sure, your boss will make life difficult for you. There is no two ways about it. And do not be afraid to be vulnerable, right? Because your boss is supposed to serve as a coach also. Your boss is supposed to serve as a teacher. So in situations whereby you do not know, be open and trust your boss to tell him, oh God, I really cannot really say so much about this. I will be glad if you can guide me or show me how to go about this task, because this is the first time I'm doing this and I really do not have the confidence I can deliver on this. But I'm sure with guidance from you, I'll be able to deliver. So don't be afraid to be vulnerable. Because the worst thing that can happen to you is not being able to deliver. I'm not saying you're not able to deliver and ask for help. So you must be able to ask for help when you need to. Number 6, you must strive to enhance your boss's reputation. You must master the art of making your boss look good. This is very critical. I have been in a meeting where a direct report, his boss just gave an idea or talked about something, and the direct report just stood up and said, I don't think this makes sense. This doesn't make sense. And I can tell you that was the beginning of this guy's problem. He was a new guy, just got employed. He was on his probationary period. And in a meeting, his boss made a suggestion or said something, and the guy said, I don't think this makes sense. Well, for me, it wasn't a big deal. But the boss took this personal and ensured that he frustrated this guy and did not confirm this guy at the end of the day. So the guy was asked to leave. This is just a typical example. There are so many examples like this. So you must strive to enhance your boss's reputation. You must master the art of making your boss look good. Because no boss will be comfortable with a direct report that always challenges him and makes him look bad in public. In fact, even in private too. There is a way you can manage feedback to your boss. Even when your boss is saying the wrong things, there is a way you can manage and tell him that this thing you're saying doesn't really make sense, but in a better way or in a more polite way, right? And one way to enhance your boss's reputation is through your performance. If you are underperforming, of course, you will be exposed and your boss will be exposed to, because at the end of the day, assignments will not be achieved, tasks will not be achieved, and issues will come up. If you have a team, the performance of your team, if it is top-notch, is also one way you can enhance the reputation of your boss. Because once your boss is always taking the glory, or once your boss is always seen as a superstar, and of course, your boss knows who is making him look like a superstar, except if he's not being true to himself, right? So your performance can make your boss look good. Your team's performance can make your boss look good. And you must also be able to compensate for their weaknesses and oversights. How can you do this or make this happen? Now, I've seen situations whereby presentations are happening and maybe due to an oversight, a boss didn't do or say something he was supposed to say. Tactically, you can give your boss signal. I've done that severally and reminded my boss that, okay, you need to say this thing. No? And before you know it, he says it. It was an oversight and he almost missed the critical point, but I was able to say, this is also very important. In fact, I've been in a meeting whereby my boss was making presentation and I was sending him message. Because I noticed that there was something he was supposed to say because we prepared together and he was not saying it. He was missing a very critical point and I tried to call his attention to it. And in the course of the presentation, he mentioned it, and after the presentation, he said, thank you for bringing this up. I almost missed it. So this is very critical. So you must learn to compensate for your boss's weakness and oversight. Avoid criticizing your boss in public or even in private, right? There are ways to give feedback. Because sometimes it's not about the feedback. Sometimes it is about how you give the feedback. Feedback is good, 100%. And you must give your boss feedback in certain situations. But how you give this feedback is very critical and very vital. So avoid criticizing your boss in public or even in private sometimes. Now let's go to the 7th point. You must master the art of solving problems. How do you do this? Minimize the number of times you go to your boss with a problem or go to your boss with problems. I've dealt with so many bosses, and there's one thing that is common to them. No boss wants people who come to them, or no boss wants people to come to them always with problems and no solutions. So one way to manage your boss effectively and earn the trust of your boss and respect of your boss is minimizing the number of times you go to your boss with problems. Even when you are going to your boss with problems, after telling him about the problems, ensure you have solutions, possible solutions and options for your boss to advise on what best way he thinks you can go about solving this problem, right? So always go to your boss with problems and possible solutions. That's number 2. Always approach your boss with different solutions to a problem. Be honest enough to speak up when you are stuck. This is key. When you are stuck, either maybe on a task or on an assignment, or maybe you're working on a project and you get to a point that you are stuck, be honest enough to speak up and ask for help. This is very key. Never say this is not part of my job description. I can guarantee that this is the first step to your problem, right? So master the art of solving problems. Go to your boss with problems and solutions and be honest enough to acknowledge when you are stuck and ask for help. Okay, so let me wrap up by saying managing your boss effectively is an art. It's an art. And this art starts off with a relationship. It is a process and not a sprint. Thank you.
Wow, wow, wow. Wow, wow, wow. Interesting, insightful, informative. Oh, Titus, well done to you. Thank you so much. If you have enjoyed this session, could you please show your feelings, go to the chat box, tell us how you feel, and let's begin to drop our questions. Titus just dropped powerful career-changing nuggets in 30 minutes. That is awesome. People are saying fire, awesome, amazing, amazing, wow. So we are glad for what you've done. This is quite interesting. So let us dive into the interaction. Please, while you are dropping the thank you, the amazing presentation, it is very important that we now interact. The benefit of today's webinar would be that we have questions around this topic. Whatever you may be going through currently, maybe in managing your boss, any question around this topic, please, let's begin to drop our question. And I'm going to start. There are a lot of questions already because before the webinar started, we were interacting in our WhatsApp group, and there were questions already. So let me start with number one question for you, Titus. Okay, questions are dropping already. Right, interesting. So let's do this. Titus,
Yes, please.
we have different generations in the workplace, baby boomers, Gen Zs, traditionalists, millennials, Generation Alpha is there now and all of that. Now let's look at a situation where your boss is a baby boomer. You know what I mean? People who are maybe over 50, 55 years and above. I don't want to say those who are close to retirement, right? So, and because you are a millennial or you are a Gen Z or even a Generation Alpha reporting to this boss, who has a traditional approach of doing things, who is overtly rigid, not flexible, and especially not very techy. So when this person has an idea, he doesn't listen to other people's suggestions. I don't want to say the person is domineering, but this person is not very flexible. The person is not techy, and the person is not, he doesn't listen. So some people will say, because my boss have these traits, my boss is a difficult boss, because when they try to push in their own ideas or suggestion, the man or woman barely listens to them. So the number one question is, how do you manage a boss who is overtly rigid, who doesn't listen, or who is, the person is made in their ways. They do not want to do things the new way because you are the tech savvy millennial or Generation Alpha. So how do you cope with this kind of boss? Because it can be frustrating where you have a smarter, faster way of doing things. And the boss is saying, no, 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 this is the way we did it in 1995, 1985. Okay, so that's my first question to you before I go to other questions in the chat room. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you so much. I have worked with a boss like this. In fact, two of them actually. One of them is a female and the other is a male. I don't really like talking about gender, but so one of my difficult time in the course of my career was working with this woman. She's actually a baby boomer, you know. I wouldn't want to say she's difficult. She's not difficult because for her, what she's doing is the right thing, right? For her, because of her generation, there is a certain way they think. And normally she's supposed to have evolved, you know, but of course, not all of them evolve. So she is that kind of person that wants to be domineering. You know, when we go for meetings, nobody talks in the meeting. We all keep quiet. We'll sit down for 1 hour, 2 hours. She does all the talking. Anything she says, we say, you are correct, man. Thank you, man. And we go, because at the end of the day, we just want to get out of the meeting. Sometimes we even set us, in the course of the meeting, we'll send messages to our colleagues, other colleagues to come and call us, claim that there is a problem on the shop floor so that they will come, call us, and we'll go, just get out of the meeting, right? So I'll give one scenario. Something happened. She's not techie. So I make presentations for her. She at that time, she was the operations director. So she of course, at that level, she does a lot of presentations to the central leadership team and also to the board. So when we're making presentations, of course, for me, as a millennial, there's a certain way I want my presentation to look like. There's a certain way, you know, I want to present data, analyze data and all. But for her, she doesn't want it. She will tell you, Gado, this is how I want to do it, like this, do it like this, do it like this, do it like this. At first, I didn't like it. At first, I was like, no, why is this woman saying this doesn't make sense? I know it doesn't make sense, right? But I had to come to the point that I had to come to terms with the fact that, okay, this is who this woman is. This is her personality. I need to accept her personality and then try to gradually begin to drop these things one by one. Because at the end of the day, it's not like they will not accept it. But tactically, I started dropping these things one after the other. That's what, like for the presentation, for example, there was one time I saw an error in the presentation. I called her attention to it. She said I should leave it. I should leave it like that. I said, okay, no problem. Okay, I left it. So when she went for the presentation, I don't want to say unfortunately, that same point I highlighted was called out in the presentation, and she was bashed seriously. When she came back, she was open enough to call me and say, Gado, and you said this thing, And I refused. When I went to the presentation, so and so happened. I said, well, man, you know, some of these things happen. I didn't want to say, I told you. I said, once in a while, these things happen. And since that day, you know, she started listening to me. She started accepting some of my ideas and all that. So one way to manage these people is, first of all, to accept their personality. Because for me to be able to change you, or for me to be able to drive change, I must also understand things from your own point of view. Right? Once I understand why you are saying you want it done this way, I can now come up with why I think you should not do it this way. Right? So I need to put myself in your shoe. So, and you know, that is one thing that Gen Zs don't do now. That's one thing that millennials don't do. Gen Zs will always want to have it their way. It is their way or nothing. So, but we need to also understand that we also have different generations in the workplace, and there is a certain way they think and process information. Once we understand that this is how these people think and this is how they process information, we now be able to get ideas on how to manage them and how to also gradually begin to push what we think should be done. So that will be my response to this question.
Wow, thank you so much, Gado, for that response. Quite very spot on. So we have other mentors in the house. I would have added to that point, but I know we have other mentors and I want them to also lend their voice. I see Teju in the house. I see Tony. Does any one of you, I want to add one or two to what Gado has said concerning that question quickly. Tony or Teju, anyone? Before we go to other questions, there are a lot of questions. Sorry, I'm not putting you on the spot, but I know you are here. You may have one or two to add. Ijoma, Idris, anybody at all want to add one or two to that question? The question Gado just answered is bosses who are maybe baby boomers, who are rigid, who are made in their ways, who do not listen to suggestions. How do you manage them? You want to add one or two other mentors in the house? Anyone, please, before we move on.
Hi, Cheryl.
Hi,
Good
Teju.
evening.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Apologies, my video will stay off. Yeah.
It's okay. It's okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Titus. Interesting conversations, quite relatable. So for just like you mentioned the generation of the boss. I think it also starts from there. Most baby boomers are very heavy on respect, right? So these are the sort of people that you can't afford to go above them. Maybe to report or complain, you automatically make an enemy. So it starts with understanding the peculiarities of the generation of the line manager you work with. So for baby boomers, they are big on respect, they are big on everything, discipline and all that, cultured. So when you understand that, then you also need to know, most people will tell you how they want to lead, right? You initially joining the organization, how do you like, some people like to micromanage. The reality is you can't improve the personality of your boss, you can just walk around it. So if you have a boss who wants to, they want to do things their way, the question you want to ask yourself is, can you thrive in that sort of environment? If it's an environment where, for someone like me, honestly, I don't have any sub story when it comes to line managers. I've been blessed so far. And I also like to think, just like Titus said, it has to do with performance. Once you're a performing employee, the reality is even your line manager does not want to lose you, right? Because it helps them. A performing employee is a performing line manager, so they are taking the credit. So if you come in from a place of performance, such line manager at some point will yield. But if you've not showed any level of performance or you're not representing your line manager well, it may not be able to ask for so much concession. So at the point where you're joining, let your line manager find you reliable, dependent, indispensable. Then at that point in time, you can now start coming and start saying, no, can we do this? I mean, once you've proven yourself, your line manager, your boss will begin to listen to you, however rigid or tough, because you've built a level of trust that I can trust this person. So that has to come first. Once you're certain this person trusts you, this person is dependent on you, then you can now begin to negotiate or start asking for some concession. Oh, can I submit this? Can you push back? But at the end of the day, one thing I understand about baby boomers, they are very, very heavy on respect. So if you're suggesting anything that they don't align with, don't push it too much. Don't beat it down. Don't, bro, just gradual process. Let them do it anyway. Let them make mistakes. Don't say, I told you so. Shebi, if we are done, no, you have to be very circumspect. You have to be emotionally intelligent. okay, can we try this? You know, don't gloat. Maybe I've said my own, let me go. Our nuances, they speak louder than our words. So I think from my point of view, these are the few points I can share right now.
Thank you so much, Teju, for that. Thank you, Titus and Teju. That is very, very, very relatable, and thanks for your response. Quite informative and insightful. All right, because of time, let's go on to other questions. Richard says, never say this is not my job description. What if your own subordinate responds to you that way? How do you handle them? So he's saying, now, if you are the boss, right, and your own direct report tells you that you should not say this is not my job, how do you handle such? Do you understand the question, Titus?
Yes, 100%.
All right, great. Go ahead.
Okay, so you know, again, this is very common in the workplace, and that is where a lot of people miss it, where you say this is not my job. Not even about job description now. Saying this is not my job is out of it completely, because at the end of the day, it portrays you as somebody who is a blocker, somebody who doesn't want to take responsibility, somebody who doesn't want to take additional, do something extra to help the team win, right? So yes, you will not say this is not my job to your boss, and of course, you wouldn't expect somebody who is your direct report to say same, right? So at the end of the day, the truth is, if they know better, they will do better, right? So as a line manager, if a direct report says, this is not my job, for me, one thing I will do is call this direct report, try to engage this direct report, and try to make the direct report see reasons why this is supposed to be done. Yes, this is not directly written hook, line, and sinker in your job description or your job responsibilities as something you need to do, but this is something we need to do as a team to enable us win, right? So once you engage that direct report, make him see reasons, him or her see reasons why this needs to be done, then I think it will be a win-win for everybody. But however, there are situations whereby I have seen direct reports who insist on a specific task not being part of their job. Of course, no problem. I will move the job and give the responsibility to somebody else, but at the end of the day, you have created an impression about yourself and your personality. So one way to go about this for me is to engage that individual and make them see reasons why saying something like that is not acceptable and why the task needs to be done, whether it is part of the job description or not part of the job description. So that will be my response.
Okay, thank you so much. So just to add to that response, Titus. So everybody has their JDs, right? And everybody has their own task and deliverables in the workplace, okay? If a particular task is being given to you and it is actually not part of your JD, and you have the time to do it, right? Please, because it's a team, we all should win together. Please do it. That is, if you are not very busy. But if you are very busy, don't just say, this is not my job. And like Teju said, your nuances, the way you say this is not my job. There is a way you can say it that your line manager will understand that, oh, you already have your table full. And that's why you are subtly saying this is not your job. And you can convince him or her that there are other priorities that are also tied to other deliverables for the department. And does he or she want you to drop other things and do that? If he or she says yes, then fine. But you have let him know that there are other things that are in the front burner that are more important or more priority than this one. But if the manager says, don't worry, drop this, do this, then fine. But in all of this, do not come across, like Tatos says, as someone who doesn't want to be responsible or doesn't want to help the team to win on tasks that may not be on their job description, okay? Thank you. All right, there are other more questions. Let me quickly rush to them. So this person says, in a situation, David says, in a situation where you are loyal to your boss and most work are handled by you and pressure is on you, while other colleagues do little or nothing, how do you cope with such situation? It's kind of related to what we just discussed, but please, Titus, go ahead. I'm sure you understand the question.
So I just wanted to say it's part of exactly what you just talked about. You know, again, there is a way you can come across to your boss trying to make him understand that your table is full already. And of course, there are other individuals who are part of the team that are not fully engaged or maybe have some spare time. So it's not about the issue, it's about how you go about the issue, you know. Yes, you do all the job and then they always want to load it, because at the end of the day, the reward for hard work is always more work. In a team, if you are one of the persons who is very reliable and very dependable, your boss will always get to you or reach out to you when there are jobs to be done, or when there are tasks, or when there are deliverables to deliver, right? So what I will advise is, just like Shehu mentioned, reach out to your boss and make your boss understand that, oh God, a lot of things are already on my table. You know, you are the one who asked me to do A, B, C, D, and A, B, C, D are related to this and this and this and this. And if we don't deliver this, this is what will happen, this is what will happen. So I think this job can be given to this person or this person, as the case may be. So it's about how you go, how you express the issue to your boss. But at the end of the day, just like Shehu said, you cannot outrightly say, I will not do it, or this is not my job, or whatever, or the work is too much for me, something like that.
Thank you, Titus, for that. Thank you. Let me move on because of other questions we have. A situation where, this is from Inke Ruka Okeke. She says, a situation where you have tried to manage your boss, but the boss still proves difficult. What will you do as a subordinate?
First of all, I will tell you, you cannot fight your boss because you will not win.
Yeah.
You will not win. I can guarantee that. So I have been in this situation, and at a point in my career, I resigned the job because of my boss. And in fact, I resigned the job to nothing. I resigned and went back home, stayed home for 3 months because before I got back to my feet again. All right. So, and this boss was a very difficult boss, very, very difficult. But I've tried to manage this boss on different occasions, because just like Teju said, you cannot change the personality of your boss. The only thing you can do is to work around it, right? So accept their weaknesses, accept their strengths, and see if it is something you can cope with and all that. But I got to a point that I could not cope. And the reason was because the workplace became so toxic. In fact, I became sick. I began to have issues in my family and all that. So it got to a point, and I told my wife, I cannot continue. You know, this is, if I continue, I'm going to lose myself, right? It's going to affect my mental health and so on. And I resigned. So at the end of the day, it's all about you checking if you can actually cope with this. You know, because again, the first thing to do is not to run, is to try to see if you can fix it. But if you cannot fix it and you cannot cope, of course, you'll be left with no option than to bounce.
All right, thank you, Titus. I need to mention that your video is not on, Titus. We are not seeing your face. So I've seen Tony raise her hand. Thank you. We can now see you. I've seen Tony raise another. I've seen Esther. So Tony, please go ahead before we go to Esther.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me, please?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much for a great presentation, Titus. I was enjoying it because, you know, whenever you see title of a seminar called Managing Your Boss, you go, even if for a few minutes, if only to gain additional knowledge to what you've been learning all the while, because you never learn enough about that, don't you? I don't want to add something to what you've said, because what you've said is completely valid. But I also realized that, one, depending on your personality, two, depending on your background, and three, depending on your generation, your concept of I've done my best to manage your boss is different from person to person. So before someone takes that decision and says maybe the kind of decision you took, which is not the wrong decision, because it's a contextualism depending on the circumstances. Do you ask other people for advice? Did you go to other people and say, what do I do in this context? Do you maybe look at the people who the boss respects within the organization? Maybe had a conversation to just, I want to understand this person, it could be better. Is there something I'm doing wrong? Because the truth is that a lot of us might, and this is another type of scenario, we believe we're doing our best, but maybe we haven't hit on the right strategy. And it could be exposure, it could be maybe maturity, even sometimes in our cases. I'm not advocating sticking with a bad boss or a toxic boss. I'm just saying that before you say I've done my best, what does that best constitute? Because listening to you, I would say, yeah, this person has done their best too, but I'm not there with you. I don't work day to day. I don't see. I'll give you an example of what happened to me. So I'm privileged to be a manager of people as well. And I've had to deal with all sorts of subordinates too. I had an approach to dealing with my subordinates, which I thought was a good, fair, and considerate approach, giving them space to learn, grow, make their mistakes. But it was evident that that it wasn't working. So on asking, I now decided to ask around. I asked my husband, my family members, other managers, this is my situation. What do you think the problem could be? And eventually I realized that my approach to managing was wrong because of the nature of the team that I had. And when I changed tactics, I saw the difference. Okay. So while I appreciate that you are indeed doing your best, which is possible, just be sure that you're getting counsel from other people, you're opening yourself to understanding things better. We have this personality, there's this personality test that tells you the best way to deal with some certain types of personalities is A, B, C, D. If, for instance, you have someone who is more social, who likes, sitting you down and telling you the story from when they were your age, etc., and you go to that office and you're that sort of person, you just want to do bam, bam, bam. This is what happened, this is how I handled it, etc., you're going to find it difficult to relate that kind of boss because he's a relational person. He likes you telling stories too, sitting down, gisting, and then maybe you now insert, your issue there, and then you now discuss it, both of you discuss it. That's the one type of person. You can have someone who is more dominant, and maybe you are more social, and you like going in asking about their family, their children, everything, and person like, just tell me what's good, just tell me what you need. Let's treat it. And then you take it as if, oh, this person is not a great boss, doesn't like me. Every time I try to be friendly, the person shuts me down. It's their personality. They may, if you study them and understand that, okay, this side of person just wants, what was the problem? How did you handle it? What did you need my advice? And then you go in with that approach, you win them over. So whatever decision you take, just make sure that you've had the best counsel, because if you ask for different perspectives, you tend to see it from just your own point of view, and you have a more robust understanding of the person you're working with. So by all means, take your decision, whatever you need to do that's best for you and your career, but be sure that you've actually taken the time to study, to understand this person, and receive counsel from other people that may be your shoes. Thank you. That's just what I want to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mrs. P, for that. Let me just summarize what you've said. I will say it in just 2 sentences. Every boss has their mumu button. Find that boss's mumu button. For lack of a better way to say it, you have to meet them in the middle point. You have to unravel their personality, because while you are saying they are difficult, there are other persons in that team who do not have that experience. So meet those persons and ask them how you managing this person. So find your boss's mumu button, right? And the second thing she said, let me also summarize, is look inwards. You may be saying you have done your best. Please be sure that your best is actually the best, that you have, tried every other option before you give up, okay? Thank you so much, Mrs. P. Esther, over to you for your contribution before we go to other questions.
Okay, thank you, SDB. Titus, thank you for your job, well done. So this topic is, in fact, can never go out of stock. Managing one's boss, okay? So it's all encompassing, okay? And it's something that we really need to look into, because most failures, like Titus has said, that you're a high flyer, all depends on the work environment. How friendly, what's the mood of the workplace? What's the mood of your boss, your team, right? So I have different scenarios that actually speak to this topic. So I've had choleric bosses starting off, okay, in the corporate world. And at some point, I was really at my wit's end. And so one day I just go back home, I just said, look, I'm not going to that office tomorrow. I was telling my husband, I'm not going to work again. Forget it. Tomorrow, I'm not. And you know, he was just looking at me and say, my friend, what is it? You know, and he's this type that has gone through all the bank trainings you can think of in Access Bank. So he understands, he knows, they've taught them, they know those things and all. You just be laughing at it, come. And that advice he gave me way back has really, really helped me through the years. And what's that advice? Don't try to change your boss. Find a way to manage your boss. He was just straight to the point. Don't try. Don't even try. Just find a way to manage your boss. Like you said, find his mumu button. And so that particular boss, I just conditioned my mind. Okay, you're a troublesome person. Okay. So I just told myself, this person is a troublesome person. And then he was just doing all he was doing. I will just be following him. I don't even bother to interrupt or anything. I'll just be following like a mumu. You understand? Not that I was finding it so funny and easy. It wasn't. But at the same time, he was just this choleric person. You just forget about trying to do anything good, trying to change him. You can never satisfy him. And so I just told myself, plan your exit. Okay. And at some other point, that was a man and then a woman. In fact, don't even bother. Right in the presence of his guests, of her guests rather, she would tell you, don't you have, yeah, I told you to do this. Don't you have brains of your own? Right in the presence of her guests. Yeah, I told you to do that. Don't you have brains of your own? And you're like, please let this ground just open. Please let this ground just open. So, but in all that, what do? Just find a way to manage your boss. And then I've had this boss then who has been so understanding. And in fact, one day he just said something. Esther, you remember? Yeah, we have this thing called a chat with the MD. Okay, he's not based in the country. He comes in 3 or 4 times a year. And then when he comes, when he wants to have, I just organize that so that he will have, you know, the employees, he will have a talk with them. Everybody will talk. Even while the COVID happened, I organized something online. You always talk. So there's this particular one, then somebody just came up and said, sir, we told you this, we did that, and this, Esther said this, and then he just looked at me and said, Esther, what I told you, we agree, we tell you. And I was just looking at this man. We never said anything like that. In fact, I was not in that meeting. But did I try to say, no, sir, I was not there. When what? I did not do any of that. I just said, oh, okay, I'll go back, I'll look into it. But when the meeting ended, it was not even that day. The following day, I went back to him. I said, sir, remember this thing? I was not even in that meeting. So, oh my God, that's true. You were not around, this and that. Now, imagine if I had. Immediately he said, I just said, no, I was not there. Why, me? No, that's not correct. Just imagine that. So giving your boss, trying to manage your boss, you really need to study them. Some people will just come and study this and I tell the boss, I say, no, I can't. I'm watching his mood. So I know when to approach him with certain things. I know when to tell him certain things. I know when to argue my case. I know when to stay put and withdraw. It is very important. And so some people, some newbies in the corporate world will come and say, come, you have received your offer letter. What's the next thing? The next thing for you is to study your boss. Did you choose him? No. So that is your best bet now. Study him and then follow your JD back to back. Go to him and say, sir, this is my JD. Okay, so where do I start from? What do you want? What's your expectation on this? How do I go about it? If you really want to grow. So it's an all-encompassing subject. Very important for you to thrive and stay sustainable and grow in a corporate world. That's just what I want to add to it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Esther. Thank you for that wonderful contribution. So Ijoma, I see your hand, but I'm coming back to you. We have about 8 more questions to go, and even I also have my own questions. So Sanusi Emmanuel says, is referring to your presentation titles where you said, don't always take problems to your boss. He says, what happens when you have a boss who always feel they have the best ideas to either carrying out a task or solving a problem. So he's saying, if this boss has, this is who he is, he has the best ideas. Should I always take problems? Should I always go with them with solutions?
Yeah, so again, you know, there is no hard and fast rule to this whole discussion. To this question, I'll advise, since it's somebody who feels, because at the end of the day, he feels he has the best ideas, okay, no problem. So that you don't offend his ego and all, of course, you go back to him and tell him, okay, this is the challenge I have. Let him speak, right? Let him speak, get his ideas. And then in the course, while he's speaking about his ideas, you also chip in your own ideas, you know, and then try to create a forum where you discuss and then agree on what is the best way to go about solving the problem, right? But at the end of the day, by all means, let the boss also understand that you have ideas around solving the problem. That is my response to that question.
Thank you, Titus. This next question by sorry, I'm skipping the questions. I want to ensure I don't skip any question. Okay, someone says, how do you deal with a boss who wants to know everything, including matters that should remain confidential between employees and HR? So, Titus, go ahead.
My brother, my sister, tell your boss if he wants to know everything, tell him everything, right? But for matters that should be confidential between the employee and HR, keep it confidential, please. But if he wants to know everything, because I've worked with a boss like that wants to know everything, tell him everything. Tell him everything. But of course, in telling him everything, you also need to use your discretion and apply wisdom, because at the end of the day, there are certain things that you also do not need to, not just tell your boss, but not anybody. You don't need to tell anybody. There are things that should be kept confidential. There are things that are even personal. Keep it to yourself, right? But if he wants to know everything that relates to the job, of course, tell him everything that relates to the job. At the end of the day, you are trying to create or find a workaround, because you cannot change him. And if he wants to know, let him know. Why not? So that will be my response.
All right, thank you. It's just to paraphrase that, ensure that you understand the confidentiality policy in your work area is very important. Anything that the business says, for instance, you are HR, you can't, because you want to please somebody, right, and give maybe payroll figures to maybe a senior colleague who you feel is close to your boss. He can help you influence your boss. Please, anything that should be confidential, right? If they ask you, tell them, I'm sorry, I cannot, because this is what the company policy says. All right, that's that. This question from Richard says, how do you manage a boss that refuses advice and wants to do things his way, but when things go wrong, they blame you for it? Titus, you got that right?
I do. So again, for me, how do we go about this? I'm thinking I've had the best response to this. So, of course, the bosses will always want to, especially bad bosses, will always want to find a way to exonerate themselves and look for who to blame when things go wrong, right? But by all means, try to, again, I work with a boss that I always send, when I discover that, okay, when we have a discussion with this person, at the end of the day, if something goes wrong, he turns back and points accusing finger and all. I try as much as possible to document our engagement, document our conversations. You know, for me, it's just a way to keep track of what we are discussing and what he's asking me to do, right? It's just like a way of defense. Normally, I shouldn't be doing this, but because of how I have engaged with this person and how things have turned out over time, I resorted, okay, the way to manage this person is to ensure that we have a documented discussion, such that if anything goes wrong, of course, if he's blaming me, I will not say, oh, guy, it's not me. No, I wouldn't. But if it gets to a point whereby it may cost me my job and all, I may be forced to bring out my evidence to show that we had a discussion and we had an alignment and there was a goal from this boss. You understand? So that will be my response to this.
Okay, thank you. I want to move fast now. Ijoma, I saw your hand. I will come back to you, please. Kingsley says, how do you manage a boss who believes that people need to be watched every minute? That's micromanaging, and that they are incapable of doing work by their own. They need to be supervised all the time. How do you manage bosses who want to micromanage you? who don't believe you can be independent and work on your own without supervision.
So again, at the end of the day, because again, managing this kind of people, there's nothing you can do about it. For me, I will tell you, this is who he is, this is how he wants to work, understand how he wants to work, and then work with him that way. You know, the most important thing is at one point or the other, try to give feedback, right? This boss, because most times some bosses do things and they feel it's right, but when their attention is called to it, they take a new leaf, right? So work with this person and try as much as possible to take advantage of opportunities to drop one feedback or the other to make this person understand that this task is something you can do seamlessly and all that. And one way to prove this is because most people who micromanage are people who have been disappointed before. They have given tasks, and then at the end of the day, they didn't follow up and something went wrong and they were bashed or something, the outcome wasn't so good. So the result to micromanaging people. But if over time you have shown and proven to this boss that he doesn't need to watch you or track your performance and so on, he will be confident and be trust that you can do this without micromanaging. So for me, at the end of the day, is for you to build the confidence of this boss to the level that he is sure that he doesn't need to micromanage you and you'll get the job done. So that will be my response.
Thank you, Titus. In summary, earn the trust of your boss with your results. It's very simple. Over time, you'll be credible and they will trust you and they won't micromanage you. The next question from Colin says, how do you manage a boss okay, how do you manage a situation where your boss's boss is neglecting the inputs of your department because he or she dislikes your own boss? That's the head of the department, your boss's boss. So like the CFO is discrediting the contribution of maybe the head of finance, you know what I mean, because both of them are not in good terms. How do you manage that kind of situation? Now, there are two bosses in the picture now. Yeah. Your own boss is the one that his boss does not like. So because of that, the boss's boss is discrediting or neglecting the inputs of that department. How do you manage such a situation?
So again, I will say there is little or almost nothing you can do in this position because it is not your boss now that you're trying to manage. This situation is beyond your boss. It is your boss's boss.
Boss's boss.
Right? So my advice will be, the question now will be, why does your boss's boss not trust your boss's input?
Yeah.
That is where the problem starts from. So there is a problem, there must be a reason. It's either your boss's boss doesn't feel your boss is competent enough, your boss's boss doesn't trust the capability of your boss's boss doesn't trust that your boss can lead his team to deliver the results that are required. And because of that, he doesn't trust your boss or takes input from your boss, right? So in this case, you are just I don't want to say the ant now, but you are the lower guy. So the best bet is to, if you want to help your boss and if you are close to your boss, try to engage your boss and make your boss understand that he needs to find out why he is not trusted and then find a way to fix or earn the trust of his boss.
Okay, because this question is very dicey, I would like to get inputs of other mentors before I also say something on it. So Tony, Idris, Ijoma, do you want to talk now on this particular question? If your boss's boss, right, is discrediting the inputs of your department because him and your boss are not in good terms, how do you manage that situation? Any of the mentors, please, let's lend our voice to this before we move on. This is a very, very tricky and very funny situation for one to find him or herself. So anybody speaking from the mentors?
Okay, so SDV, you put me on the spot here.
No, you raised your hand earlier, so that's why
of course, what I wanted to contribute was different. But okay. I mean, straight to the point, I think that to that extent, that conversation has come up a number of times since we started this session, right? That it is about the value that you bring. The best way to earn a boss's respect, so to speak, is about the solution that you are able to provide based on the job. So if whatever your own contribution will be towards improving what you and your immediate line manager can, provide for the senior person. I think that's the first way to start getting that person's attention to focus on what you guys can actually do. So if you work with your boss in such a way that whatever is given to you guys in your unit, you guys are able to deliver it, I bet you're on the track to start earning his respect. I'm one of those career people who do not think that there is any reason why somebody will just hate you for nothing, right? So it's about, like Thomas said, Titus said, find out where did it start from? At what point was it there from the very beginning? Was there anything that led to it? If there's nothing that you can trace, I bet it has to be something related to the quality of your work. So it starts from improving the quality of work. And if the person is focused on results and you're able to provide that result, I think that the mentality that he or she had about your boss and from there to you will start changing. Now, it may look like it is just your boss that he has that distance for, but if care is not taken, it to be the entire unit, because it's your line manager that looks after the unit. So to earn the higher person's respect, do your best to contribute to your immediate line manager so that people will be able to provide the value that will make that senior person to start respecting you guys. I think that's what I'll stop for now.
Thank you, Ijoma. Thank you so much. I'm trying not to also add something because there are questions in the chat box. So let me move. Kingsley says, how do you manage a boss that wants to compel you to his way of life, especially when it's outside the job? Wow, this is deep. This is deep.
Can I say something here, Jimmy?
Go ahead, Ijoma, before.
For me, I would say it's a no-no. It's the work that brought us together, right? If it is something that I don't personally believe in, especially if it is something out of my personal principle, I don't think I would allow myself to be dragged into what you want me to do, because you are you and I am me. So if it's not part of my core values, if it's not part of my principles, we can as well. I will not agree to be dragged into it. Let me just put it like that. I will not be in the best position to advise how to do it, but I think that I should stand for what I stand for, what I believe in, and not allow myself to be influenced unnecessarily by somebody else's pattern that is definitely not my own pattern. That's just me.
Thank you, Ijoma. Let me just also try to respond to this. Kingsley, I do not know what exactly your boss is trying to compel you to do, or the kind of lifestyle he or she wants you to live. But I will say you have your own personal values and personal principles. You are an adult. I believe you are over 18 years, right? The people you should listen to their advice for your personal life, aside God, maybe your parents, right? But like IJ said, what brought you and this boss together is the job. So before I say other things, focus on still delivering results, right? Keep earning his or her trust with your deliverables, meeting your expectations, exceeding expectation, right? Helping your boss to also meet his own expectations. So when your performance is there, that means you are credible. But for the other things that your boss is trying to compel you to do, for instance, I'm trying to wrap my head. For instance, maybe the boss is somebody who likes to club and maybe does other things in the club every Friday. And you are a deacon in your church. I'm just trying to use scenarios. And this boss wants to compel you to club and do other things they do in the club, right? Because of whatever reasons best known to him. I'm sorry, you need to let your boss know that you have your own life and that there are certain things you cannot do. And those are your own beliefs, your core values, your core principles. You understand? So I do not think that you should allow this to happen, right? In fact, personally, even aside somebody compelling me to live a life that they are living outside the office, as an HR person, right, I have resigned from an organization because the top management wants me to do things that are unethical, that are against the professional ethics of our HR profession. We all know that when we became HR professional, there is an oath we swore. And I'm also a Christian. So if, for instance, the MD or whoever would want me to do things that are unprofessional, that are unethical, that are also against my beliefs, I would not do them. I resigned because of such things. When I tried all I could managing this boss and things, I resigned without having a job. I'm not saying you should resign. I'm just saying that is what I would do, right? So please, please, and please keep convincing your boss why you cannot live that life that he wants you to live outside the office. But ensure that in terms of your performance, your deliverables, you are not found wanting, right? At the end of the day, when the boss sees that you are not yielding to those temptations and that you are still delivering, I believe with time, he or she would probably leave you alone and focus on the job and leave you to live your life. That's my contribution. I don't know if anybody in the room, any of the mentors want to add to this before we move on.
Yeah, so for me, I want to just add,
yeah, thank
as
you.
much as we are talking about managing your boss and all that, finding a work around your boss and all that, there must be the line. You must know when to draw the line. It is very critical. You must know when to draw the line, and there are things that you cannot compromise, right? Like in my case, just like I mentioned earlier, I resigned a job, and I resigned just like what Shehu just mentioned now. I resigned because I was getting to a point where I was beginning to be forced to cross a line that I can never cross, right? For me, at the end of the day, at the end of the day, whatever we say here, at the end of the day, you must know exactly when to draw that line. It is very critical, because at the end of the day, it's more about your core values, what you believe in, right? Because not because of one boss or because of salary or something, you now start compromising things that at the end of the day, when you remember, you cannot forgive yourself and all that. So we must learn when and know exactly when to draw the line.
Thank you so much, Titus. The next question says, how do you manage a boss who likes verbal reporting and never appreciates emails or any form of documentation? Go ahead, Titus.
Oga, give him verbal reporting, please. Give him verbal reporting. In fact, I have a boss that never reads mails. If you like, he has more than 2,000 or 5,000 mails that he doesn't open emails. So if you send an email to him, you're just wasting your time, right? So he prefers WhatsApp. So for me, I send him messages via WhatsApp. It's because of this boss. I personally don't like WhatsApp calls, but because of this boss, I started adapting to WhatsApp calls and then sending WhatsApp messages. And he also sends me WhatsApp messages and all that. So my dealings with this boss has nothing to do with emails, because I know that this boss will never read my emails. And he will tell you, Oga, don't send me mail because I will not read it. So if this person wants verbal communication, please communicate verbally.
All right. Thank you.
Can I say something as well at this point?
Please go ahead, Ijoma, go ahead.
Okay, so I think it's also a good point to tie it back to what I wanted to contribute earlier on, right?
Okay.
I think that there's a lot that has to do with us, not just our bosses. As far as managing our bosses correctly is concerned, it has to do with our own, what I can call emotional intelligence. Our level of robustness as career people comes into play in determining the kind of the quality of relationship that we end up having with our bosses. Now, rather than ask, why is this thing like that? I think it makes more sense if succeeding as a career person is any of your goal at all. Rather than ask, why is this thing like this? Why does this one like verbal this thing or not emails? Instead of asking the question of why, can you just understand it like that and then make it, so to a good extent, you will be the one to make the adjustment just so you guys have that harmony. Except, of course, the only proviso to that is that if it's something that will put you in trouble any day because there is no evidence, then that's a red flag. So if it is not anything like that, and for those kind of circumstances, even if it means sending it, I mean, just as even if he doesn't read it, like you have something you have an evidence to draw out when the need arises. But that is not to mean that you are deliberately doing it to offend him, because that would also mean that he will fight back when the chips are down. So I'm saying, try to understand what he wants and do it like that, but make sure you don't enter into trouble from there, so that you are able to effectively manage the relationship between you and him, and then there's no cause for alarm tomorrow. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Just for the purpose of the HR people on this platform, for us in HR, documentation is key. And I do not believe that anybody who is in HR would have a boss, maybe head of HR or HR director, who would not love documentation. But if you do, I want to beg you for your own sake, like Ijoma said, if this thing you may bounce back and put you in problems, right, with the organization, please, please, and please document it. Very, very important, just to mention that. All right. All right. Okay, I think these are other comments. No, I'm scrolling down. Okay. Okay, okay, Isaac was trying to comment on the question that we have answered. Thank you, Isaac, for that wonderful comment. Okay, these are also comments. Is there a question? Okay, also comments. Yeah, thank you, everybody. Leticia says setting boundaries is critical, very critical. These are the rules of engagements. For Peter's sake, start throwing banters. Isaac says email documentation is critical. Yeah, so the day the chips are down, how do you defend yourself? Yeah, it is critical. Whether the boss reads or not, please document. Okay, I'm trying to see if there, okay, is this a question? Okay, somebody says the fact is bosses have more responsibility to manage their subordinates than the subordinates do to manage their bosses. Unfortunately, this is not the case in this part of the world. Someone will call this an indigestion fact. Thank you for your comments, Adedeji, Adeyemi. Okay, if there are no more questions, let me go back to my own questions now. So our time is fast spent, but we all agree that this has been very engaging, and this is a very important topic that we have to trash out and discuss other questions. So, for instance, if your boss is always taking glory for your work, right? This one is something I've heard people, some of my mentees, and know when we discuss and they say, I do this, I put in on the work. In fact, somebody still told me last week that the boss, I don't want to call name or the organization, the boss is head of HR. So the boss has tactically left all his own duties to the next line. Who is this, my friend, right? The boss is as head of HR, now just to go do meeting. You just go and do meeting, come to office, drink coffee, look at, they will do slides for him. He goes to meeting, do presentation, everything in the slides, they are not his own ideas. He just, glosses over them and all of that. So the team is loaded with work. He is just, I don't want to say faffing around, and even in all of this, he's not giving credit to the people doing it. You understand? Even when they want to go on vacation, he's not. So how do you manage this kind of boss that is taking all the glory, shining, and you are there dying, doing all the work? How do you cope? How do you manage such a boss? Titus, I see your hand, IJ, will come back to you. You are muted, Titus. We can't hear you.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
So this is very common, just like you mentioned. At one point in my career, I was there, right? I always felt bad that, okay, I do the job, I make the presentations. If I've made 1 million presentations so far. So I've been fortunate to work with very senior guys right from my graduate trainee days and all that. So I've been very close to them. More like we do the work, we do all the presentations, we do all the analysis, we give the boss, he goes to meet the board, goes for the executive meeting, makes the presentation, shine, takes all the glory and all. But the question is, what do I do? Will I fight him and say, okay, you're not giving me the credit? No, he's the boss, That is why he's the boss, right? For me, I see this as an opportunity to learn. So all the job I do, all the tasks I do for my boss to take the glory, no problem. Let him take the glory now. My own time will come that I will take the glory. So for me personally, as one of my secrets, I try as much as possible to make the job of my boss easy. So I try as much as possible to take some responsibility off my boss. So amongst all the boss I have worked with or worked for, most times, 30% or 40% of what they are supposed to do, I do for them, right? Down to the level of making presentations, doing analysis for them, getting all the data for them, preparing them and getting them ready for whatever presentation or engagement they have. They will go for this engagement, take all the credit. Sometimes some of them call my name or mention my name, give me credit and all that, and sometimes they don't. So but the question is, what do I do if they don't? Nothing. There's nothing I can do. He's my boss, but my consolation is that I am learning. I'm building my own competence and capabilities in helping this boss do this job. So for me, that's my response to this.
Thank you, Titus. I would, Ijoma, I know you want to say something. Can you go ahead now before we move on?
Okay, thanks. So I think I share Titus' idea completely, right? Our job as career people actually is to make our bosses look good. And we need to understand that our hunger should not be different. And like you said, a time will come when it will be your own turn. Good bosses are able to, manage that process such that they mention you when they need to mention you. But again, even if they don't, just look at it as what you are doing for the sake of helping yourself get to that level where they are. And then you have people do it for you again. But if you start questioning, if you start getting worried about it, I promise you it will not help you. It will not help your emotion at the moment. It will not help you feel good. You start feeling demoralized. So completely remove your mind, if it is possible, from that. Focus on that that you are doing, and then use needs to learn, because the time will come when you too will have people, work for you. And if you are good enough to remember to mention their name, then fine. But otherwise, just take it that your job at the level where you are is to make your line manager look good, and then continue in that spirit.
All right, so I want to be the Oliver Twist now. This question, there's another dimension. So after doing all of this, yes, Ijoma and Titus, you have said what I would have said, the way I would have responded. But after doing all of this, then there is time for appraisal. There is time for to appraise you and give you good ratings. And this boss is still holding back, even after you have done all the work. You have made him shine, right? So how do you handle such a situation?
NSPPD.
What is that?
No, but you report him to the. It has now become a prayer point too. I can tell you. Because that is the height of it. For me, I've been very lucky.
Just report him. Just give his name to Pastor Jerry.
I've been
Somebody
very lucky.
Somebody says village people. Sorry, guys, this is very humorous.
Yes. For me, I've been very lucky to I get promoted because of this, because my bosses, maybe they don't give me credit openly, but when it comes to appraisal and all, I get very good ratings. And then for me, that is another consolation or reward for hard work, right? And I also understand the fact that I've never been in a situation where I don't get the credit and I don't get rewarded at the end of the day. So, but for me, I think when you get to that point, it becomes a very serious issue. And I wouldn't say you should comfort, but you can, of course, you can. Appraisal, it's a two-way conversation where your boss gives you feedback and you give your boss feedback. So I think in the process of this engagement, you can also chip in these things and make him see, because at the end of the day, you are documenting, he brings his evidence, you bring your evidence for performance against objectives, right? So this conversation can happen. I think that's another way to go about it. I think IJ wants to say something also.
So, yeah, again, I think that, as career people, there are things that we should learn naturally that will help us, that will help us get to where we need to get to in our career ladder, right? I want to assume that our performance management system will be robust enough to the point where, let's say calibration or whatever, a situation where beyond your immediate boss, there are other people who are familiar with what you are doing, and they will be able to speak for you in the room where you may not be there. And then your bosses and other, bosses are there to discuss performance. So that's why what you are doing, I think it's actually, how do I put it now? Like your work must show to people beyond your immediate circle. Other people referencing you for good work will come into play, such that if they are discussing performance or they are doing a calibration that they are doing, somebody will say, no, I know this guy, so that nobody is victimized. It can be very painful. It can hurt so much if you put in all the work at the end of the day, somebody wants to just, rubbish you and make you look like you're not doing anything. So that is where, other people, apart from him, will also speak up to say, no, I know this guy. So can you defend this rating that you are giving him? This is what I know about him. So if we have robust performance management systems, I think that some of those things will be handled. But again, it is not everybody that is lucky to find himself in that situation.
Environment. Yeah.
So perhaps one thing that you can do if you find yourself in that unlucky space is to find out, like Thomas Titus said, have a conversation with him. Is there anything that you are not doing well? Why is it that it's only when appraisal is happening that you look good, but every other time you support him, you make sure that he shines? So how come it does not reflect when he's appraised? So if you need to pally him, if you need to, it's possible that you are doing every other thing well, but it's just one thing. So will you do yourself a favor to find out what that one thing is? And I'm sure you'll be able to sort it out. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, guys, for how we have dealt with this question. So get feedback. I also want to add, please, as you are performing, please keep evidences of your performance. Like Title said, performance appraisal is a two-way street. Is an evidence-based approach of looking at the goal set vis-a-vis achievements, right? So let's keep evidences of our performance from January to December, every month, January, February, every week, if possible. Have your Excel sheet, have a folder where you keep all your milestones, all your achievements, so that when you're going for appraisal, you are going with evidences. And if your boss, if he's not giving you the rating you think you should have, ask questions politely so you know the areas where you need to improve. Because sometimes we may think we are doing our best, whereas we have neglected some unwritten expectations, like Titus said earlier on. There may be some expectations we neglected, maybe during the course of the year, right? And the boss was not magnanimous enough to give us feedback on the go. So please have a conversation and know where you need to improve. And I like the interaction in the chat room. Let me just go through some of them. Thank you, Isaac, has been very engaging. Teju also, but I want to read this one from Teju relating to our earlier question. He says, even if the boss does not give you credit, know that people know who is doing the dirty work, and that's true. You must be visible. Find a way to be visible intentionally. Your boss's boss aren't always that clueless. That's true. People know the one who gets things done in a team. We know the performance, and you are simply preparing yourself and your expertise for a higher role. Thank you so much, Teju, for this. Very, very, very relatable and a very good advice for all of us. All right. So this next question, one of the very funny ones that we had earlier on in our WhatsApp and network. And for those who want to join the Hacking Performance WhatsApp group, please, the link I posted earlier on, please look at the chat room and see the link. Please join us if you want to. So there are bosses who don't draw the limits, who feel that all your 24 hours, you should be using it to work for the organization. Bosses who will call you at Friday night, 11 p.m., bosses who will send you WhatsApp Saturday morning, 6 a.m. when you are still sleeping. Bosses who will call you when you are in the church on a Sunday morning, maybe 10 a.m. You understand? Bosses who don't give you a breathing space, who don't respect your own personal time, right? They keep encroaching into your personal time. You understand? You know, because you don't also want to look bad, you don't want to appear irresponsible. Sometimes you give in to some of the requests they ask of you. But this is taking a toll on maybe your health or your even private life. How do you deal with such a boss? How do you let them know they're encroaching into your private and personal life? Okay.
Okay, so I talked about boundaries now. Yeah. I have been this is also this exact example or question you're asking is part of the reasons why I left the job I left. Because okay, the thing is normally I'm supposed to resume 8 o'clock. My job is 8 to 5, right? Of course. But for those of us that are manufacturing professionals, you know that it's never 8 to 5. But the thing is, I accept that it's not 8 to 5, right? But it cannot be 8 to 12 p.m. right? Or maybe 7. So what happened then was that sometimes I resume as early as 7 a.m. and get back home as late as 12 midnight every single day. So if this is one of, I understand maybe we have breakdowns, we have issues that we need to fix, and we have to stay late to get them fixed so that production can continue and we can be able to give sales product to sell. But the thing is, it does not become a daily routine such that even when there is no issue, there is no reason to stay late, somebody is making me stay late because the person doesn't want to go home. I don't know for what reason. Maybe, I don't know, maybe he has issues with family. I don't know. But I don't have issues with my family on that. I want to spend time with my children. I have a wife at home. So why should I stay till 12 midnight? And I end up getting home and my wife starts asking me questions. Oga, are you sure you're coming from work? This is 12 midnight. You understand? So this whole scenario, this whole thing, I couldn't just find a way around it, and I had to just say, come on, this is just it. I cannot. You understand? So for me, give feedback. Of course, I give feedback. I try to explain myself. Sometimes I forcefully leave early, but when I come back the next day, I get the bashing of my life and all that. So for me, I had to just take that tough decision and all that. But before you take the tough decision, just like everybody has said, make sure you have tried, reached out, and made all the possible efforts. That will be my response.
Thank you, Titus. Titus, it seems like I say you don't vessel.
I don't suffer.
Okay, thank you so much. Teju, I see your hand. Please contribute, please, before we move ahead.
All right. I have a contrary opinion, and I like to draw that from my work experience, right? I say this thing, I say it depends on where you are in your career, right? Availability and reliability will play a big role in accelerating your career, right? I don't have a problem when my boss is calling me by 3 a.m. Neither do I have a problem being called by 11 p.m. In fact, at some point, I've had my CEO called me at midnight because he had an emergency. And his first question was, who is the person that is likely to be awake by this time of the night? So of course, he sent me the message, and in less than 10 seconds, I responded, right? And we averted a particular situation. So I think it depends on the quality of boss you work with, availability, reliability, right? If you're someone who someone can reach out to, I'm not speaking to staying late at work. That's a different ballgame entirely. I don't support that. I don't buy to that. But I think as we look at moving higher up in our career, the demands of middle management is different from senior management. By the time you're moving into senior management, even mid-management, the lines begin to get blurred. It's not a case of once it's 5 p.m., I'm leaving the office. I don't want to hire someone in my team who is not available after 5 p.m. I still reached out to a team member today, just so could you confirm? It's just a chat, right? It's okay for you to tell me you're not ready by this time or you're not available. But by the time I'm hiring someone at a certain level, the lines are blurred. And I wouldn't want you to, at the point where we're getting promoted or you're moving into senior position, it's not going to be about, oh, this person is solid in compensation and benefits, or this person amazing data crunching, or this person is very good with reward system. We begin to look at the soft skills, right? We begin to look at how reliable is this person. We begin to look at how much this person can move, even if they're not in the office. So I think we should be open to that. If you have a problem with that, then it speaks to the quality of boss you're working with, or that you're not enjoying what you're doing. But if you're enjoying what you're doing, at some point, your line manager will call you at a point where it's not convenient. It could even be at a party, right? I mean, all through my career, I like to believe my top selling skill is my reliability and availability. And I think that has catapulted me way beyond whatever my technical capabilities will be. So we should be open to that if we want to rise in our career and have people speak about us in rooms where we're not present.
Thank you, Teju, for your response. So let's balance all of this. Personally, I have worked in multinationals and I've worked with different kind of bosses. In my last role as head of HR, I was working with a boss who is a German, not even a Nigerian. And this man respects time. Resumes before 8, closes at 5, and encourages others to close at 5, right? I reported to him as a CEO. We could chat 9 p.m., we could chat over the weekend and all of that. When work demands, he calls, and that's because as head of HR, I relate with himself and the board, right? Now, like Teju said, when we go higher, our demands become higher, right? Responsibility becomes more. And you should also be reliable and dependable when you get to especially C-suite level, a senior manager role. But it also depends on the philosophy of your manager, of the leaders you're working with, their personal values. My CEO, my line manager, believes in keeping to time. Maybe out of 5 Saturdays in a month, he may not call me more than maybe twice. And it is only when there are business demands, where there are business exigencies, when there are maybe emergencies or something critical, he wants to make a decision and he needs HR input, right? So you need to understand first your boss. And that's that's the meat of this discussion. Understand your boss. If the man is someone who likes to chat after work, maybe to get feedback from you or want to pass an idea through you, fine, understand him. And if you are available, he would be glad, because again, you are helping him to make critical decisions. But there are some organizations where I've worked as multinational as you, nobody calls you after 5. So some of us are lucky to have worked in that environment, while some may not. But when you get to a senior level, you need to be available, like Teju said. But bosses also should know when to draw the limits, where the boundary should be. You shouldn't be the boss that do not respect that your reports have their own personal life. I personally will not do that. But again, it all depends on who the boss is. Understand your boss, understand the organization. And in all of this, let's have a balance. You should be available, you should be reliable at the senior level. But again, let's have a balance. If you feel that the demands of your boss outside work is encroaching too much into your personal life, have a conversation, a polite one. Let them know that, for instance, for me, why should you call me in the midnight, 12 midnight? Why should you call me 3 a.m. in the midnight? You could drop a message. I would read the message when I wake up. You understand what I mean? But calling at those dead hours, right? Or calling somebody in the morning on a Sunday when you know the person is a Christian, goes to church. Come on. So bosses should also know where to draw the limit. But again, at the senior level, like I said, you should be reliable, should be available, because there are times when your CEO wants to make a decision, and because they know that your input is very key, they would call you. But please, all of us here, some of us are managers of people. It's also a message for us. Let's learn to be able to draw the limits, right? Not encroaching too much into people's personal or private life. That's just my own contribution to that. All right, our time is fast spent. We've been here for almost 2 hours. I don't know if any of the mentors have a contribution before we go to Titus to give us his closing remarks and before we close. Of course, they need to prepare for whatever we're doing tomorrow, even though there is holiday. Some of us still need to rest. Maybe some of us have had a very busy weekend. I have looked at the chat room now. There are no questions. So any of the mentors in the house, anyone wants to contribute? Promise, you want to say anything? Let me see who else is available. Promise is there. Any question before we close? Okay, Joma has been talking. Idris, I saw you. Esther has been talking. I think Idris has left. All right. If there are no more questions, though I have more questions. So what I'm going to say is, let's keep this conversation going in the Hacking Performance WhatsApp group, because this topic is very, very germane, and we can't over discuss this topic. Let me put it that way. So please, let's keep the conversation going. So if you want to join us, look into the chat room, and I just said again, join us. Let's keep the conversation going. Join the Hacking Performance Africa WhatsApp group so that we can keep answering your questions and give more insights. So ladies and gentlemen, I want to say thank you so much for your time. This has been a very engaging, a very interesting discussion. Most especially, thank you to Titus for your time, for the wonderful presentation, and to Teju, to Ijoma, to Tony, to Esther, to all the other mentors, and to all the participants for your question that has kept us discussing and kept us engaging. Thank you so much for your time. And I wish you all a very interesting and restful rest of the weekend, and of course the holiday tomorrow. Okay, Titus, over to you for your closing remarks before we close.
Yeah, so there won't be any closing remark. I think you have done justice already closing the session. So I want to say thank you to everyone. Thank you to HPA for the honor of being the facilitator of today's session. So let's keep it going. And I would advise all those who are here for the first time. I can see a lot of people who I invited and they joined. So I advise you also join the HPA network, and then let's keep this going. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Teju. Thank you, Joma. Thank you, Idris. Thank you, Promise. Thank you, Esther, for your contributions.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone.
All right. Thank you, Titus. So with that, we bring this
Thank you,
webinar.
Thank you.
So everybody, you can unmute yourself and say thank you to Titus. Let's appreciate him for his time. You can also go to the chat
Titus,
box.
thank you and good night.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you, Sean, for putting
All
together.
right. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Sir
Happy
Titus.
Democracy Day.
Okay, happy Democracy Day to Nigerians.
Happy Democracy Day. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Very, very interesting webinar. Thank you. Thank you, Oga Isaac. I see you. Happiness, I see you. Thank you, Hilda. I see you. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Adedeji, Adedamola. Thank you, Kingsley. Thank you, Collins, David, Promise, Oluwatomisin, Reliance, Richard, Sanusi, Emmanuel, Shegun, Elijah. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Do enjoy the rest of the weekend and holiday. Bye for now.
All right.